Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Why doesn't the president just shut up? Just be quiet for a weekend.
He's constantly being attacked.
I don't care. Well, children were killed.
So it's okay. It's okay if the president's
have
get
some restraint. It's called impulse control. It's called being an adult. It's called being the president of the United States.
He has to just take
you cannot freak out on Twitter every single time someone attacks you.
Jason,
that is part of the job of being president of the United States. I mean, he's supposed to be a New Yorker. He's the most thin-skinned person. He doesn't need to defend himself all the time, constantly, especially after a major national tragedy where kids died miles from his winter resort where he's living in luxury.
And he went and visited with folks who were on this.
That's great, and he should. That was a good thing to do. And then he should have just quietly let the weekend go by and allowed people to mourn, have people come together for solutions,
but that's
and go through that, and then
pick
it all up on
Saturday.
Today.
He was being attacked around the clock.
So what? That goes with the job, Jason. It goes with the job. That this again just highlights how unqualified he is with it as president of the United States. He does not have the temperament. You have to be able to take the hits if you're going to be president of the United States, and he is unable to do it. So instead, he behaves like an insecure lunatic on Twitter, as opposed to being a mature adult as the president of the freaking United States. I'm sick of you guys making excuses for this.
Somehow getting attacked and not doing anything in response makes you a good president?
No,
I think that's a weird lens to look at it.
No, it's how you choose to react to adversity. And the way this president chooses to react to adversity is to behave like a petulant child. And he goes on Twitter tantrums. That is not okay. And you should not make excuses for it. That's the problem that I have.
I don't think it's the problem is we don't have a commander-in-chief right now. So we found out our country was attacked by Russia. They actually deployed agents into our country to manipulate our election, and all he could do is talk about himself. We have children getting killed and shot. He can't even console the families. A commander-in-chief is our leader. He expresses our moral fiber, and he speaks out when something happens. He defends the country when it's attacked, and we were attacked twice.
I mean, even if for every funeral he had sent out a tweet, even if some aide had said to him, here's the name of the person whose funeral is today, or the two names, this is what their lives were like. Maybe say something about it.
We're this close from this president attacking some of those kids for speaking out.
Yep.
I would not be.
That's too far.
I hate to say it, Jason. Normally, I would never think that a president would do that, but a president who has attacked a Gold Star family, a president.
So now you're going to attack the president for something that he hasn't done based on what you think.
Fair enough.
He could possibly.
Fair enough. I'm just saying this is a president that crosses lines, and I would not be surprised if he did that. But you're right, he has not done that. But look, what would you do, Jason, if under Barack Obama, Putin sent a bunch of spies into the United States? They ran around, meddled in the election, illegally spent money on campaign ads, and it was all orchestrated by Putin's chef. What would you do if the reaction from Barack Obama was, well, I didn't have anything to do with that, so it doesn't matter? And then a few days later, if there was a mass shooting under Obama and Obama blamed his own FBI for focusing on some unrelated investigation and sort of blamed them for not preventing the shooting. Just turn it around for a second. Just think whenever I think I'm being biased, what I do is, how would I react if someone else or the other party was doing this?
But
just turn around. What would you think if Obama had done that?
But there are two different things here. I mean, the director
didn't
of the
speak
FBI,
out against spies running around in the country.
Did say that they completely missed the warning sign and they missed that tip with regard to the tragedy in Florida.
Right, but,
that is an accurate statement.
But Jason, but what's not accurate is the president saying the reason they missed it is because they're all spending too much time on the Russia investigation. You well know the number of FBI personnel involved in the Russia investigation, the Mueller team, is minuscule compared to the thousands and thousands of personnel who work for the FBI.
They're two separate things.
Right, they are two.
But
two separate things.
True.
No,
I do think that they completely. I mean, look, they missed. It wasn't just a warning sign. I mean, it was
they missed it. They acknowledged it. That's terrible.
I also think they're spending way too much time on this whole.
But the president is conflating the two.
So he tweeted up.
No, but you just said everything the president said was accurate. You don't believe that was accurate, do you? The reason they missed is because they're spending too much time on Russia.
I think both of the two things can be accurate. I mean, if I were advising him on the particular tweet, I'd say go and split them up into two. But again, going back to the point, we have the director of the FBI who said they missed this massive warning, and that's something that we should have attention to, because we can't. Did
they miss it because they're spending too much time on Russia?
I think there are a lot of questions about what's going on with FBI leadership.
But I'm asking
right
you, did they miss it because FBI agents are spending too much time investigating Russia?
I have no idea what goes on internally at the FBI.
I
would have split the two tweets up.
The answer is no.
I would have handled it.
Do you know how many people work at the FBI?
I don't know the
35,000.
35,000. Do you know how many people work under FBI agents work on the Mueller team? I mean, it's minuscule. So the idea that
the counterintelligence team and investigation has nothing to do with the Miami field office.
Well, hold on, but there's lying. Not only is he, not tweeting about dying kids and funerals, he's lying.
It is Tuesday, the 20th of February of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. It is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. That is our daily special here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we're so happy to serve you up. Well. David Brooks. What's up with David Brooks? He got a article out that in this terrible time of tragedy, where a deranged kid took a military grade weapon and slaughtered 17 people, mostly kids, that in this time we need to really show more respect to gun owners. I figure because they have the guns. David Brooks, jeez, I don't know. He's almost topped by Tom Friedman. Yeah. Like, how many Friedman units does it take Tom Friedman to finally figure out where we are? Jeez. It is amazing. Tom Friedman comes out with basically an analysis that some of us more enlightened types have been expressing since even way before the election. They always catch up. At least we can count on that. They will always catch up. Okay. Well, even Peggy Noonan. Peggy Noonan is out there. I guess people are gushing over her some sort of opinion on a woman's right to choose. Which actually presages a story that we will be getting into today. Peggy Noonan is Catholic, Irish Catholic at that. Not that that's supposed to determine one's political origination, but it might. Yes, indeed. Now that I've stated that, why don't we go ahead and look at what we will be attending to today in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy's Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Well, the story that I mentioned that kind of links up with Peggy Noonan's attitude. A Idaho State Senator threatened over a dozen University of Idaho students at a scheduled meeting that he would call the state police if they ever showed up again to lobby for birth control. Then he said, "I'm a Catholic," and I'll give you a little highlight. Okay. the guy conflates birth control with abortion. He kept talking about abortion, and the students are going, we're talking about birth control. And he's waving his Catholicism in their faces, saying, oh, it's abortion. Yep, that's what we're at. GOP swing state voters are unimpressed with the Ryan Trump tax scam. I know, we're going into Trump country again to talk to Trump voters. And all I can say to the Trump voter is, I told you so. We all did. And the Chicago Blackhawks, yes, that is hockey, banned 4 fans for life after they were caught on tape racially taunting Washington Capitals forward Devante Smith-Pelly. Yeah, one of the few black players in the league. Yeah, you'll be able to hide that, won't you, fan? Well, goodbye and good riddance. After the break, we move to the chef's table where the Polish foreign minister escalated international tensions again by insisting Poles of Jewish ethnicity share a greater blame for the Holocaust than, yes, he went there, regular Poles. There's the French Poles. There's the Jewish Poles, and then there's the regular Poles. Okay. Sounds weird. And French Holocaust survivor and human rights icon Simone Veil will receive the rare honor of a burial at the Pantheon in Paris. She passed just this last week, so very rare. One of only 5 women who will be interred at the Pantheon. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. If you go to the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the rightish of the page, you will notice the chat room link that is monitored quite diligently by our rowing girl, Kelly Lincoln. To the rightish of the page are the Contribute Donate buttons, and that is how we pay our bills, folks, and we really appreciate your generosity in that. Thank you. Thank you so much. You can contact me at Justice Putnam on Twitter. I am on Daily Co's as Justice Putnam. And let's see. Podcasts for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy show can be found by way of Spreaker. And I put up links to that on all the appropriate social media platforms. But you'll also find us on YouTube and TuneIn. And I keep mentioning, I hope I'm on the iTunes registry. I got to figure out how to do that. Nothing is quick with those people. You would think. I thought everything was supposed to happen faster. Now we have to wait. Okay. Well, you can find podcasts where all good podcasts can be found. And okay. So at the top, that was Tara Setmayer getting into it with Jason Miller. God, talk about a chinless guy. No wonder he has to have that goatee. And it doesn't help, Jason. It really doesn't help. And I just love how the right wing in general, but Trumpsters particularly, specifically, always talk over you or try to talk over you. You try to say something, they got their talking point right there. I have to put up with this at the big family gatherings with my Trump bro, and now he has a certain how do I put this delicately? He has a certain overbearing masculinity. Let's put it that way. Yeah, that's one way of putting it. You think I've got overbearing masculinity? It's actually quite tempered in comparison. So I've just noticed that the bullying seems endemic to that group. And how do you stand up to a bully? By standing up to a bully. I know it kind of helps when you have a certain physicality to maybe match the overbearing masculinity. I hate it, but that's where we are. But, boy, they love to talk over you, and they just keep repeating the same talking points. And the secret is not to get caught up in the minutia of defending everything that they blurt out. You got to get back to the subject. And in this situation, it's, why can't we keep military-grade weapons out of the hands of, I don't know, the civilian population? I know I'm a romantic, but I just don't think military-grade weapons should be in the hands of civilians. And when you talk to the people who insist that they have to have an AK-47, what is it for? No. They admit it's not for hunting. And yeah, it's a people killer, but the people that they're thinking of killing are members of their own government. Which, to me, is reason enough to take the guns out of their hands, because apparently they are a seditious lot and see no qualms on bearing down, leveling off their rifles, and firing at representatives of their government, whether they be law enforcement, bureaucrats, you name it. They have no qualms. That's what they're preparing for. Which, I don't know. I would probably say you can't have those guns. Go to the ballot box. Don't go to the gun store and buy bullets. It just seems simple. Okay, well, let's get into this first article here. And it is out of the Idaho Press Tribune. So, Idaho. Yeah, Idaho. Yee. A Republican state senator who shouted at university students in the Capitol to lobby for birth control on Monday now faces an ethics complaint after a tweet from an account presenting as the lawmakers directed students to discuss killing babies with a Democratic colleague. This is by Kimberly Crucy. By way of the Associated Press, I guess the Idaho Statesman doesn't have any, or I'm sorry, the Idaho Press Tribune doesn't have an actual correspondent. They could pen this themselves. Sad. State Senator Mary Jane Jordan filed the complaint against Republican State Senator Dan Foreman. It's one thing to disagree with policy. It's another thing to position something like that against another lawmaker, Jordan said in response. This type of behavior is beneath the Idaho Senate. I hate to tell her, but this behavior has been long-standing, almost like they're used to it. Ethics complaints against lawmakers are typically anonymous. So while Jordan confirmed she is filing a complaint, she did not disclose many details of what would be included in the complaint. Okay. Now, after the complaint was filed, the roughly year-old unverified Twitter account was temporarily deleted. It was reactivated briefly to state it was not affiliated with Foreman. A message seeking comment with the account manager was not immediately returned. Sure. Now, I love how the premise on whether a account is legitimate or not is apparently here determined by whether it is verified or not. You know, the little check mark. Do you know how hard it is to get one of those little check marks? I've noticed that some neo-Nazis get them quite regularly. Even when they get them pulled from their account, they get them right back. So in this particular fellow's instance, it was only a year-old account, and that may be why it's unverified, because I don't know. I've never seen Twitter verify accounts quicker. Maybe they do. But just because something is unverified doesn't necessarily mean it's illegitimate. In fact, that's the whole verification process isn't predicated upon whether you were legitimate or not. Jack even says that. Oh, as an aside, let me tell real quickly. Apparently there's a lot of Russian money. Lots. Some oligarch owns 6% of Facebook and about that much of Twitter. Kind of makes you wonder why neither one of those platforms have been very effective in getting rid of Russian bots now, isn't it? Interesting. I don't know why Russia came to mind here, except for the fact that the University of Idaho is in Moscow, Idaho. And that's where these kids came from. They traveled over 300 miles for a scheduled meeting with this guy and Foreman. And they were going to lobby for a bill that would allow women to receive up to a 12-month supply of prescribed birth control and promote better sex education on college campuses. Now, we know what lobbying is. I mean, we keep hearing lobbying is bad. Lobbying is bad. It's only bad if one side is in there, like the tobacco industry, at the exclusion of those like from the AMA. The American Medical Association. Those are both lobbyists lobbying for particular issues. So lobbying, you come and present your ideas and how you think a bill should be addressed and what it should address. And you try to convince these representatives the validity and benefit of what you were lobbying for. There's nothing unusual about it, except I suppose when the liberals start lobbying, because Foreman abruptly canceled the meeting Monday while they were on their way. Nice. The group left a note and condoms in his office before moving on to other scheduled meetings with lawmakers from northern Idaho regions. Don't give condoms to a Catholic. Oh, no. They don't like that. I don't think so. Later that day, the Republican from Moscow passed the students in a hallway and several people recorded him shouting abortion is murder. I'm a Roman Catholic and a conservative Republican. I think what you guys are doing stinks. Well, of course, the students were not at the Capitol to talk about abortion. They were at the Capitol to present and encourage lawmakers to vote in favor of birth control and sex education. Well, birth control to this particular virulent cult of Catholicism believes that birth control is murder. Even the rhythm method is murder. Nocturnal emissions. Yeah, these guys, and I'm telling you, they're guys. Go Saturday night, confess that they had nocturnal emissions, and it's a sin, and they got to ask forgiveness from God, and the priest will give them their penance, and then they'll go out and say their Hail Marys and their acts of contrition so they can take communion the next day. And then on Monday, they start all over again with all their sins so they can confess them on Saturday night. Other meetings with lawmakers were peaceful, even if lawmakers disagreed with the students' talking points. Senator Bob Nonini, a Republican from Coeur d'Alene, waved a rosary while talking to students about abstinence, but did not shout or demean them. And Foreman, the state senator, was described as completely unhinged. Even if you disagree with what we have to say, there's no excuse for that kind of behavior, one student said. He was being a bully. All right. So, because these kids were affiliated with Planned Parenthood, birth control and sex education, it's all about abortions because that's what Planned Parenthood only does in the minds of these fevered. What are they? They're feverish for sure. And let's see. This isn't the first time Foreman has been recorded having an outburst. Last year, body cam video from the Lata County Sheriff's Department showed Foreman swearing and shouting insults with an unseen and unidentified man on September 14th, the first day of the county fair in Moscow, Idaho. Go straight to hell, you son of a bitch, Foreman could be heard saying in the footage. Boy, he sounds like a really nice Catholic. It's okay. He'll go to confession on Saturday night to confess that he called somebody a son of a bitch so he can take the host the next day. The deputy then asked Foreman to move along. Yikes. Foreman has also faced scrutiny over an email response to a constituent's concern over climate change. Foreman called global warming nonsense and said it was a scam used by left-wing fanatics to raise taxes. tax cuts were the Republicans' not-so-secret weapon to stopping the Democrats in the midterm. So far, it doesn't seem to be working. And this is out of Share Blue Media by Matthew Chapman. Republicans are terrified by Democratic voter enthusiasm against Trump and the GOP Congress. One of the big reasons Republicans were so desperate to pass their tax scam giveaway to billionaires and corporations last year was that they hoped workers would credit them for temporary take-home pay increases, and deciding to keep them in power was fine. Yeah, the voters want to keep the people who put money in their pockets. Chicken in every pot. But this strategy seems to be failing in places where Republicans need it to work most. Journalists from Reuters went to Pennsylvania's 18th congressional district. God, they always go there. Where voters face a special election in March between Democratic Marine veteran Connor Lamb and GOP State Representative Rick Saccone, and found that most acknowledged they would keep more of what they earned, but that did not necessarily translate into support for the legislation or for Saccone. In fact, Reuters found several GOP voters believed the tax bill was theater or worse. Yeah. One local Trump supporter, George Smith, put it even more succinctly. It was almost like being thrown a bone. Okay. Well, the GOP should be terrified by these remarks from voters, because this special election in the suburbs of Pittsburgh is already way tighter than it should be. The district, which was vacated when Representative Tim Murphy resigned in disgrace when it was revealed he urged his mistress to have an abortion, is extremely conservative. I wonder if that guy's a Catholic, too. Probably. Trump carried it by 20 points. Oh, if you think that I'm on Catholics, for, just some sort of weird reason, I did study for the priesthood. Albeit very briefly when I was in middle school. But, yeah, I was a novitiate. There you go. As polls showed the race tightening, Trump frantically rushed to Pennsylvania to campaign for Saccone, because Trump had carried it by 20 points, but neither his involvement or the tax scam seems to have done anything, as polls have gotten tighter since then. Yep, okay. Well, the GOP should not be so quick to hang its electoral hopes on a tax bill the public so clearly still mistrusts. As voters compare their paychecks, the mileage Republicans can get from tax cuts for billionaires in blue-collar suburbia is proving very limited. Finishing up here on the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, is by Bob Brigham out of Raw Story. 4 fans have been banned from attending Blackhawk hockey games at Chicago's United Center after being caught on tape racially taunting Washington Capitals forward Devante Smith-Pelly. Team spokesperson Adam Ragowan said racist comments and other inappropriate behavior are not tolerated by the Chicago Blackhawks. The fans were ejected on Saturday after chanting basketball, basketball, basketball at Smith-Pelly, who was black, while he was in the penalty box. There is absolutely no place in the game of hockey or our country for racism, Capitals coach Barry Trotz said after the game. I think it's disgusting, and there's no place for it. Athletes in our country don't deserve that. It just shows ignorance. And the NHL has declared the month of February is Hockey is for Everyone as a campaign to promote inclusion in the sport. Well, there's some people that want hockey to be of a particular hue, don't you think? Well, let's get to our break now, and we'll come back and go through weather from around the world and finish up at the chef's table. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening SpaceRadio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Free at Last. Of the recent YA novel-based movie series, The Maze Runner might be the most interesting, especially for those with a bent towards sci-fi. With The Death Cure, it's the last to wrap, if in fact it has. In film one, the protagonist, led by Thomas, Dylan O'Brien, started off in a glade surrounded by a high-walled maze and with no memories of how they got there. It all proves to be an experiment run by a government agency, acronym WCKD or WICKED, which is searching for a cure for a civilization-threatening disease to which the group is immune. The initial goal, obviously, is to free themselves and later to find refuge. As for Wicked, it isn't the unidimensional evil entity of, say, President Snow's regime. Despite their methods, Wicked is trying to save the world, so an interesting moral dilemma is present. The immune group saving of themselves takes the form of a violent action-adventure, complete with the usual convenient extractions and marksmanship discrepancies between good and bad guys. But director Wes Ball, who's helmed the series from the start, keeps things moving, belying its 142-minute runtime. He's helped along by a competent, even touching in places script, and a venue change from various U.S. spots to Cape Town, South Africa. The acting crew has benefited from working together and on other projects since the series' inception, and is joined this time by some hot character actors like Walter Goggins as the leader of the Cranks. Speculation abounds as to whether this one wraps up the series with the original source material. A blatant shot of Thomas's hand in the final scene leaves the door open with a huge question about the group's safety amid civilizational disarray. Skippable if you haven't followed the series. The Maze Runner, The Death Cure is must-see if you have. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
How rigged are the elections for the United States House of Representatives? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. In 2016, in the popular vote for Congress, Republican candidates beat Democratic candidates by 1%, 49 to 48. That 1% difference in the popular vote translated into a 47-seat majority for Republicans in the House. We're talking primarily here about gerrymandering. And before the United States Supreme Court now are cases that raise the issue whether gerrymandering, no matter how grotesque and partisan, still is permissible. Meanwhile, one state, at least, is doing its best to restore democracy. In Pennsylvania, in 2016, Republican congressional candidates won 8% more votes than Democrats, with the result that Republicans were awarded 13 of 18 congressional seats, or 72%. In other words, the 8% margin in the popular vote became a 44% margin in the number of seats won. But the Pennsylvania Supreme Court just struck down that state's congressional map as violating the state constitution, and the United States Supreme Court in all likelihood will not touch that decision because it's based on the state constitution and not the federal. Which leads us back to the cases before the U.S. Supreme Court, which will decide by the end of its term in June whether congressional maps can be drawn so as to almost ensure the result before any ballots are cast. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
Food corporations and their academic cohorts keep trying to make an industrial tomato to rival Mother Nature's product. And they keep failing. They might consider this instead, the Rutgers 250. It's a revived version of the classic hybrid tomato bred in 1934 by Rutgers University and Campbell Soup. Its excellent flavor and texture made the Rutgers variety the tomato of choice for years, eventually accounting for 60% of all tomatoes grown commercially in the U.S. But it fell out of favor in the 1960s when big industrial growers in California and Florida switched to hard and tasteless tomatoes bred to withstand the crushing power of the harvesting machines they had begun using. The Rutgers variety soon disappeared from grocery bins and was forgotten until 2009. That year, with the good food movement mushrooming and with consumers demanding that supermarkets sell truly flavorful tomatoes, plant breeders discovered that Campbell still had genetic material from the parent plants used 75 years earlier to develop the original Rutgers variety. So, for 8 years, they've been working with it again, using crossbreeding techniques that go back to Latin America's pre-Columbian natives. Slowly but surely, they brought back the Rutgers and its natural flavor, glowingly described as, quote, the very taste of summer. The resurrected Rutgers is not hard enough to be machine harvested and shipped across country, which is one of its major virtues. The fact that this tomato must be grown and marketed regionally is one step toward a decentralized, deindustrialized, and better food economy. This is Jim Hightower saying, instead of trying to squeeze nature into a high-tech corporate model, this tomato represents an understanding that our food system can and should cooperate with nature and foster the growth of regional economies.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
This is a Radio Labour report recorded on Monday, February 19th, 2018. I'm Mark Belanger. The attacks against unions, especially public employee and teacher unions around the world, are growing in intensity. In the United States, for example, anti-union forces funded by billionaires have brought a case to the country's Supreme Court, which could have devastating effects on union finances. The case focuses on so-called fair share fees. These are fees paid by workers who have opted not to join the union in their workplace, but still have to pay for the costs of collective bargaining, which they benefit from. One of the unions which would be severely affected if the case goes against the unions is the American Federation of Teachers. The AFT represents some 1.7 million teachers and other education workers. Candace Owley is the AFT's vice president.
I'd like to talk a little bit about huge attacks that are taking place in our country and really across the globe for unions that represent workers in the public sector. In the United States, the campaign has been relentless, and it has come primarily from right-wing government, but funded by large corporations, particularly corporations that are like the Coke corporations, who have as their agenda eliminating the unions, because the unions are the run vehicle that really can stand in the way of corporations having full power. So we're facing right now a court decision that will come out within the next few months that will attack the right of public employees to have unions and the right to represent our members. It's really attacking the very freedom of workers to form unions and to represent workers and to stand up for what is good, particularly to stand up for public services and to stand up against government corruption and for quality and for quality working conditions and safe working conditions. And this is not a fight that is only in the United States. This is a fight that workers across the globe are facing. And so we need to come together and help each other in these fights. So support and solidarity from unions in other countries across the globe for the unions in the United States as they face this major battle this year. So showing that public sector unions are vital for equality services for the community. They're vital for your democracy. They allow everyday working people to have a say about what their life is like, what their services are like, even what their government is like.
The largest global union in the world, Education International, is celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. EI was formed when two major teacher international organizations merged under the leadership of General Secretary Fred Van Leeuwen, who is stepping down this month. Sharon Burrow is the General Secretary of the International Trade Union Confederation. The ITUC represents national union centers, such as the Ghana Trades Union Congress at the world level. Ms. Burrow sent a video greeting to members of EI who gathered in Brussels recently to celebrate the anniversary of the global union.
Happy anniversary, Education International. The merger which created EI seems like just yesterday. That freezing January in Stockholm gave rise to a warmth of unity, of solidarity, of determination to build a new international, an education international. It was a moment that we can be proud of, a moment in history. But what we can be really proud of is the fact that you have built not just a unity globally, but indeed a purpose around both development and solidarity and activism that is now taking on the dominant corporate model, the power that is undermining not just workers' rights, not just secure employment, but indeed the very heart and soul of opportunity, of a civilised base for our future, that of universal access to public education.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. Follow us on Twitter @Radio Labor. I'm Mark Boulanger. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We'll start off with our palate cleanser, which is weather from around the world, and we begin along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America. It is currently 27 degrees. Now, this particular weather station is a little bit out of town. My little weather station, I got one. It was a gift for my grandkids. Oh, they're so sweet. But, little weather station, it's not very complex. I'm not uploading to anything. But where I'm at in town is, it's registering at 38 degrees. I'm sorry, 20. Now it's just changed. It's 30 degrees. Okay, and we're supposed to be slightly warmer today than yesterday with a high of 46. We remain under a winter weather advisory, and winds are now light and variable out of the east-northeast, and they will remain light and variable as we get on to the evening hours, and we are expecting snow showers accumulating about an inch beginning late this afternoon, early evening, with another inch tomorrow. Okay, well, the air quality index is at 34 parts per million, which is rated good. Pressure is holding steady at 30.23 inches. Visibility is now up to 10 miles, and humidity is at 80%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased, and they planted them somewhere on their property, kind of like what I did. And these people live around the world. London is 48 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 46 and cloudy. Rome is 52 and partly cloudy. Kiev is 31 and mostly cloudy. Kabul is 43 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 65 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 43 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 67 and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 37 degrees, and sunny. And New York is 53 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world. Brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these weather stations on their property, and these people live around the world. Okay, first offering here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays is by E.A. Crunden out of Think Progress. Okay, well, you know what they say. Those who forget history are doomed to be brainwashed by people changing history. And it sounds pretty reasonable. Unbelievable. Okay, well, Poland. Trump likes that guy in Poland, too. The government of Poland further escalated international tensions over the issue of accountability in the Holocaust, appearing to level a measure of blame at Jews for the genocide. Following the passage of a bill criminalizing any suggestion of Polish complicity in the Holocaust, Foreign Minister Jacek Szapucewicz seemed to suggest the actions of Polish Jews deserve to be analyzed more critically, as opposed to those of other Poles. Like the regular Poles. You got the Jewish Poles and you got the regular Poles. Sounds like a wacko pole dance to me. You knew that was coming, didn't you? I know. I was going to go there, and I did. I didn't mean... Well, yes, I did. I don't know. Okay. Mother, may I poll? See, I could go on, but I won't. A tweet published Monday by Poland's Ministry of Foreign Affairs quoted Szapucewicz's comments to Polast, one of Poland's largest television channels. Sounds like state TV to me. Okay. Well, he said it's not about falsifying history. It's about studying it. We are discussing the behavior of Poles of Jewish ethnicity. We need calm discussions and work carried out by historians. I should add, historians of their choosing. Oh, yeah. Now, his comments came a day after Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki played down accusations of Holocaust denial. On Saturday, Morawiecki told a conference of world leaders in Munich that Jews had a role in the Holocaust akin to those of other groups, including Nazis themselves. Oh, I get it. Okay. Let's see. He said now, you're not going to be seen as criminal if you say that there were Polish perpetrators, as there were Jewish perpetrators, as there were Russian perpetrators, as well as Ukrainian perpetrators, not only German perpetrators. Yeah. Spread it around. Spread it around. Yeah. Blame the victim. And in this case, the victims are being blamed by the perpetrators. The comments further inflamed a firestorm that has been raging for weeks and spurred furious comments from Israel. Well, you would expect it. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned Morawiecki that a comparison between the activities of the Poles and the activities of Jews during the Holocaust is unfounded. Okay. Yair Lapid, head of the centrist Israeli opposition party Yesh Atid, demanded Israel's ambassador to Poland be recalled. The Jewish state will not allow the murder to be blamed for their own murder, Lapid said. Okay, I agree. Jewish groups more broadly panned the comments. A statement from Ronald S. Lauder, president of the World Jewish Congress, demanded an immediate retraction and apology from the Polish Prime Minister, calling his remarks nothing short of an attempt to falsify history that rings at the very worst forms of anti-Semitism. Morawiecki sought on Sunday to clarify the comments, holding a second phone conversation with Netanyahu in 3 weeks over the same topic. Morawiecki later tweeted about the discussion. The Holocaust, the genocide of Jews committed by the German Nazis, was a horrific crime. Even during those dark hours of war and murder, there were individuals of all nations who bravely carried out gestures of the greatest mercy, he wrote. Sadly, this period also exposed the dark parts of human nature, which for some meant collaboration with Nazi Germans. Dialogue on these difficult chapters of our history is essential. A dialogue we hope to continue with Israel. Today, I spoke about this with Prime Minister Netanyahu. A spokesperson for Poland's ruling right, far left Law and Justice Party said the Prime Minister's initial comments told the truth that is difficult for the Israeli side to accept, and asserted that Morawiecki had nothing to apologize for. A sentiment the foreign minister echoed a day later. Wow. I guess that's one thing to unify the parties in Poland, right and left. Bash the Jews. Blame the murdered for their own murders. Wow. Brings them together. National unity. The back and forth over Jewish accountability in the Holocaust is the only latest in an ongoing dispute of Poland's own role in the genocide. I mean, let's be clear here. Just prior to Holocaust Remembrance Day, they signed a law and actually draw a rare rebuke from the Trump administration that any mention of the Warsaw Ghetto and what they call regular Poles having anything to do with the genocide in the Warsaw Ghetto, you'll get 3 years in jail for that. It was the Jews who caused their own murders in the Warsaw Ghetto. Now, some might say that the genocide in the Warsaw Ghetto occurred because there was a resistance movement of Jews who fired on the Germans when they shouldn't have. That was one alternative history from Poland. And now we're hearing complaints, well, if only the Jews had had guns, then they were able to defend themselves against the Nazis, which they did. There was a vast and wide-ranging resistance movement. Albeit very small and not very well armed. Okay? But there were. They didn't just line up and go off into the trains. Jesus. So, Poland's efforts to distance itself from the atrocities carried out during the Holocaust date back decades. While many countries across Europe aided the Nazis in their efforts to exterminate Jews, Poland itself was occupied by the Nazi regime for years, something the country actively resisted. Poles themselves share a legacy of deep animosity towards the Nazi occupation, and around 3 million non-Jewish Poles were murdered by the Nazis. I don't know, let's blame that on the Jews too. If only they didn't come for the Jews, they wouldn't have killed all of the regular Poles. Well, that's a compelling narrative, one that in no way changes the realities of Polish Jewish history. During the Nazi occupation, 6 death camps were established in Poland, but you can't talk about that now. You'll get 3 years. More than 90% of the country's Jewish population, once the largest in Europe, died during the genocide, and the population has never fully recovered. While Poland's government actively resisted the Nazi regime, Jewish Poles experienced persecution and discrimination both before and after the occupation at the hands of their neighbors. Now, of course, many neighbors of Jews were heroes in the midst of this. That's true. But it still doesn't take away the fact that Poland was complicit in this, and death camps were built by whatever Vichy type regime that existed in Poland. Okay, a surge in anti-immigrant and anti-refugee sentiment has spread across the country in recent years, targeting minority communities, including Polish Jews and Muslims. During a Polish Independence Day march last year, upwards of 60,000 people marched in a demonstration widely decried as a display of white supremacy and nationalism. Marchers carried signs declaring Europe will be white, and a number of other slogans including Poland Catholic, not secular. And the Interior Minister of Poland later called the march a beautiful sight. All right, finishing up here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays is an article by a worker bee at the Agence France Presse. Come on, Agence France Presse, give your worker bees some recognition. They deserve it. French Holocaust survivor and rights icon Simone Veil, not to be confused with French philosopher Simone Veil, who died last year at age 89, will receive the rare honor of a burial at the Pantheon in Paris. Veil will become only the 5th woman to be buried in the Paris Monument, which houses the remains of great national figures, and only the 4th to be interred there on her own merits. The others were married to the ones deemed so lofty that they would be interred there. She'll join Polish-born French scientist Marie Curie, 2 French resistance members who were deported to Germany, Geneviève de Gaulle Anthonioise and Germaine Tillion, and Sophie Berthelot, who was buried alongside her chemist husband, Marcelin Berthelot. Veil was deported to Auschwitz in 1944 while still a teenager. She survived the concentration camps that claimed the lives of her mother, father, and brother, and went on to become an indefatigable crusader for women's rights and European reconciliation. Her biggest political achievement was pushing through a law to legalize abortion in France in 1974 in the face of fierce opposition. French President Emmanuel Macron said at her funeral last year he had decided to honor her with a place in the Pantheon to show, quote, the immense gratitude of the French people to one of its most loved children, end quote. France's National Monument Center said Monday that Veil's body would spend the night of June 30th under the watch of the Republican Guard before being deposited in the Pantheon's crypt in a ceremony to be broadcast live on television the following day. Well, quite an honor and well-deserved. We are at the end of our broadcast period for today, but there is great content throughout the rest of the day on Netroots Radio, so stay tuned for that. We will visit you tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays, so why don't you do that and join us tomorrow on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-dee-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-dee-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.